He never commanded an army. He never held political office. He never fired a single shot. But when he opened his mouth, the most powerful nation on earth had no choice but to listen. One speech, one moment, one man standing at the edge of history with nothing but his voice and the weight of an entire people suffering behind him. And what he said that day did not just move a crowd. It moved a country. Welcome to Epoch Stories, where history isn't just dates and names. It's the human moments that shape the world we live in today. If you're new here, take a second and hit that subscribe button, because every week we bring you stories like this one, stories that will stay with you long after the video ends. And if you've been with us for a while, welcome back. This one is special. Today we are talking about a man whose words became a mirror held up to the face of America. A man who grew up knowing what it felt like to be invisible in the country of his birth. A man who, despite everything, chose to dream out loud in front of the whole world. But here is the thing most people don't know about him. The version of the speech that shook America almost never happened. What he was supposed to say that day and what he actually said were two very different things. And the reason he changed course in that moment is a story all on its own. This is the story of Martin Luther King Jr. and the speech that became the heartbeat of a movement. Picture Atlanta, Georgia, 1929. A baby boy is born into a black family in the American South at a time when the law itself was the enemy. Segregation was not just a word. It was a wall built into every corner of daily life. Black children went to separate schools. Black people sat at the back of the bus. Black men and women could be humiliated, arrested, or worse, simply for existing in the wrong place at the wrong time. Martin Luther King Jr. grew up watching all of this. He felt it as a child when white friends he played with were suddenly told by their parents they could no longer spend time with him. He felt it the first time he had to enter a building through the back door. He felt it every single day, and instead of letting that pain break him, he let it build something inside of him. He was brilliant, frighteningly so. He entered college at just 15 years old. By 25, he had a doctorate in theology from Boston University. He was the kind of man who could have chosen a quiet, comfortable life far from the fire. But comfort was never what he was after. He became a pastor. He found his voice behind a pulpit. And when the moment came that would define his entire life, he did not run from it. It was December 1955. A woman named Rosa Parks refused to give up her seat on a Montgomery, Alabama bus. She was arrested. And what followed was one of the most powerful acts of collective resistance America had ever seen. The black community of Montgomery boycotted the bus system entirely for over a year. They walked to work. They organized carpools. They endured harassment and threats. And leading that boycott, standing at the very front of the storm, was a 26-year-old pastor named Martin Luther King Jr. His house was bombed. His family was threatened. There were nights when fear must have crept in and whispered that this fight was too big, that the cost was too high. But what happened next changed everything. Instead of retreating, King leaned in harder. The boycott worked. The Supreme Court ruled that bus segregation was unconstitutional, and a movement was born. Over the next several years, King became the face and the voice of the civil rights movement. He organized marches. He led sit-ins. He was arrested over 20 times. He was surveilled by the FBI. He received death threats so regularly they became almost routine. And through all of it, he never once called for violence. His weapon was nonviolence, and he wielded it with a precision that confused and unsettled those who wanted him to slip up. Now, before we get to the moment that changed everything, if this story is already gripping you, go ahead and hit that like button right now. It helps more people find stories like this one, and it tells us you want more. Subscribe to Epoch Stories if you haven't already, and drop a comment below. Who do you think was the most powerful voice in American history? We read every single one. By 1963, America was boiling. Protests were erupting across the country. In Birmingham, Alabama, police turned fire hoses and attacked dogs on peaceful demonstrators, many of them children. The images shocked the world. President Kennedy was under enormous pressure, and civil rights leaders decided it was time for something bigger than a march. It was time for a moment the world could not look away from. The March on Washington was planned for August 28, 1963. Organizers expected around 100,000 people. Over 250,000 showed up. It was the largest political demonstration in American history at that point. People came from every corner of the country, black and white, young and old, united by something larger than themselves. King was the final speaker of the day, and here is where the story takes a turn most people never hear about. The speech he had prepared was called Normalcy, Never Again. It was a carefully written, politically measured address. It was good, but it was not the speech that would echo through history. And in that moment, standing before 250,000 people with the weight of a generation on his shoulders, something shifted. Gospel singer Mahalia Jackson, who was standing nearby, called out to him, "Tell them about the dream, Martin." She had heard him use that language before in smaller settings. She knew what it could do when unleashed on a crowd that size. And Martin Luther King Jr. pushed his prepared notes aside. What came next was not rehearsed. It was not polished in a conference room or approved by a committee. It poured out of him like something that had been building for years, maybe for his entire life. He spoke about a dream where his 4 children would be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. He spoke about a future where the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners would sit together. He painted a picture of an America that did not yet exist, but desperately needed to. And he did it with the power of a preacher, the precision of a scholar, and the heart of a father. The crowd did not just listen. They wept. They cheered. They felt something crack open inside of them. The speech lasted 16 minutes. 16 minutes that shifted the entire trajectory of American history. Within a year, the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was signed into law, outlawing discrimination based on race, color, religion, or national origin. The following year, the Voting Rights Act of 1965 followed. These were not small changes. These were tectonic shifts in the foundation of a nation. But Martin Luther King Jr. would not live to see the full harvest of what he planted. On April 4, 1968, he was assassinated on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. He was just 39 years old. 39 years old. Think about that. He changed the course of a country and an entire civilization's conscience before most people have figured out what they want their life to mean. The night before he was killed, he gave one final speech. And it was as if he knew. He told the crowd that he had been to the mountaintop, that he had seen the promised land, that he might not get there with them, but that they, as a people, would reach it. He was gone the next evening. Here is what we don't talk about enough. Martin Luther King Jr. was not celebrated the way we celebrate him today while he was alive. Polls in the late 1960s showed that the majority of Americans had an unfavorable view of him. He was monitored, threatened, and undermined by his own government. He was called an agitator, a troublemaker, a radical. History has a way of vindicating the people it first punishes for telling the truth. His words did not just change laws. They changed the way a country saw itself. They gave language to a pain that had existed for centuries and gave shape to a hope that millions had quietly carried but never dared speak aloud. One man, one voice, one dream. And because he refused to stay silent, the world is a different place. If this story moved you even a little, please hit the like button and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to Epoch Stories so you never miss a story like this one. And tell us in the comments, what part of Martin Luther King's journey surprised you the most? History is full of voices that changed the world. We are here to make sure you hear every single one of them.